I'm Jan with Jan Patek Quilts, and I do needle turn applique. What we're going to focus on today is squares within squares. One set straight and then one set on point. Okay, this is one of the two circle star Candlemats. They also work pretty well as table stands because we all know I love those now. And they have a square within a square. So what we're going to do first today is just pretend we've read the pattern and gone ahead and cut this background square the size it needs to be. We're not going to sew its borders on yet. We're just going to concentrate on doing the square and the circle star inside. So then you cut out your freezer paper pattern square, the size that's going inside, the size you want it to be, and iron it to the fabric and cut out, not a 1/4 inch, but not quite a 1/2 inch, maybe 3/8, but even up to a 1/2 inch is okay. But then we're going to peel it off the front and flip the square over and turn your square right side up with the shiny with the shiny side up instead of down, because we're wanting the edge to adhere to the freezer paper pattern now, not the whole thing. Okay, now this is a clover iron that I dearly love, and what we do, and be careful with these ladies, they're really hot. Even this part right here, any of this is really hot, but they need to be, they're like an iron. And you can do this with your big iron if you don't want to invest in one of these little clover irons, but I will tell you, it is definitely worth it if you're doing any of this kind of stuff. Okay, now I'm going to flip this around because it's easier to do it closer to me. And we're going to do this side. Okay. Now you can glue these down instead of using the iron, but what we're going to do, and right now we are going to glue the corners because the corners aren't going to be on the paper. They're going to be on cloth. So we take our little sew line glue pen and glue it right here and right here. Then I always it's kind of like wrapping a present. Come here, you. Now, the reason we're using the iron instead of glue all along the edge is after we applique this onto the background, ouch, the fabric's even getting a little hot. We're going to cut a slit in the back and pull it out. And if we glue it, it's a lot harder to pull out. You have to stretch the fabric and stress it. This way it just pulls right out. The only place it isn't pulling out is at the corners, and we don't care about them. They are glued down. Okay, so now we've got that glued down. Now what we would do is center this and just eyeball it. If you want to measure it so it's exactly, that's fine, but I don't. I just get it so it looks good. Okay, and then applique this down all the way around. I would take some of my Applique glue in the bottle and put it in the dots along the edges. That's another reason to make sure this is a good 1/2 inch here, because then there's room for your glue to spread without getting on your paper. Now that you've got that there, before you iron it down, before you sew it down, you can even do this to make sure, because that will make this kind of adhere. And I'd use a big iron for that. I wouldn't use the little one. You need the heat. Come here, you. There. All right, so now you're going to sew that down. The next thing you're going to do, and after you sew it down, cut a slit in the back and pull this piece of paper out, okay? Particularly with this one, because this is all going to be hand quilted, so you don't want to be quilting through 1, 2, 3, 4, a bat 5, and the backing 6 layers of fabric, unless you really like giant quilt stitches. So I don't. Okay, now we take our paper circle, iron it to the back, do a running stitch all the way around the back, pull it tight, and we have a circle, okay? Now we'll iron the circle down and glue the edges. Sew it in place, cut it, and pull the paper out again, all right? Then after we've done all that, we have our star, which we've traced on sandpaper board, and I haven't drawn around it, so I could show you how to do that, but I don't really need to. I don't think. I might, though. What did I do with my sandpaper board? Oh, okay, guys. This is what I did with my sandpaper board. It's right here. Okay, so we'll take this, and we've done this before, but we'll do it again right now. What the sandpaper board does, in case you haven't watched one of my videos before, is hold your fabric in place so when you draw, the fabric doesn't stretch. And then you can just peel the star off. That wasn't very good. Okay. And your pen's really good for lifting it off the sandpaper board because it sticks. Okay. So now you've sewed all those layers in place. Your circles are circular and nice and circly. Your squares are straight. And your star is really pretty in the middle. Okay, so all of those layers have been pulled out. Then you would go ahead and sew the borders on, put on your tree, your stars, your bird, and you would have a circle star table stand or candle mat. That's that set. Then we'll move on to Cityscape. And Cityscape is one of the, usually I do country quilts because I live in the country, but I have a son who lives in the Arts District of Kansas City, Missouri, which is Westport. And the streets there are lined with Plano trees, which have those little balls with all the prickles that look like stars, and there'll be mulch around the outside, then there's a black metal grate, and then there's one of these trees coming out in the middle. I didn't really think about it when I made that border, but that's what that is. It goes down the lines of the street with the star trees and the really neat old gentrified houses. It's a really cool section of town to live in. I really like visiting him. And my grandsons love playing with the star trees. I tried to bring them up to the farm and grow them, but I can't get one to grow up there. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Okay, so when I made that, we had a different thing to figure out how to do, and that was how to get the square on a point in the middle. And I did the same thing with it. I traced my freezer paper pattern, ironed it to the front, then flipped it and pulled it out and flipped it over and ironed the edges down and glued them. But now we take the background and cut it the size it's supposed to be and then iron it in two twice. So on the square, so you have a square. when you're finished, not a triangle. If you did it one more like this, then you'd have diagonal lines, but we don't want diagonal lines. We want the up and down lines. So you iron it in two twice. Okay. And now you have lines so you know, or points, so you know where your square will go. And I would take my Applique glue, and that's another reason, once again, to make those seams that you're turning under a little wide, so, because when your glue spreads, then it doesn't get on your paper. Do that in place, do your circle, and this time I haven't pulled it, so I'll pull it. It came loose as I was going around doing the running stitch on the way around. It came loose. That happens a whole lot, particularly with these bigger ones, but even with small ones sometimes. But that's okay. You don't really need it again until you're pulling it. And then you just end your stitch. Okay, so that's like that. This was machine quilted, and I knew it was going to be machine quilted, but I still pulled the paper out of the back of this because it's such a big piece. But I just cut a slit behind there and pulled the paper out. I didn't worry about cutting all the fabric of this piece out because it's going to be machine quilted, and the quilting machine can go through it. And then after you've pulled that paper out, you sew this one down. And once again, then you cut a little slit, pull the paper out, and then applique your star in the center. And those were really fun to make with the different colored stars. And that is Cityscape. We have a pattern for that. I think we have one kit left, but we have kits for these and, of course, patterns for the Circle Star Candlemat. You know, I don't know, when things stay up on YouTube, they stay up forever. So by the time you see this, we may not have kits left, but we will always have the patterns. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial for Cityscape or the Circle Star Candlemat. If you have, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks, and have a good day.